This is your announcer. This is your announcer, Chuck Blandington, welcoming you to the Metal Injection Livecast. Life is so weird right now. This week we had Axl Rose feuding with Steve Menuchen. What's next? Richie Sambora feuding with Wilbur Ross. See? I know names. Look at all those names I just said. The Metal Injection Livecast starts now.
Yeah, we are live. Welcome to the Metal Injection Livecast. It's Rob, bringing it to you right now, living it up when you're going down. I don't know, but I'm sorry. That was embarrassing. Welcome to the Metal Injection Livecast. It's Rob here with Noah, Sid, and 3D, who have hopefully unmuted their mics. Oops. And you could be a part of the show. I hear all of you but Sid. But you could be a part of the show as well if you're listening live. We are live every Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to 8 p.m. Eastern Time at metalinjection.net/livecast. And of course, if the archives are available all over the internet. And we're doing video now that we're all in quarantine and just recording our own little webcams. So hopefully you can be a part of the show. And if this show isn't enough for you, you can get more show at our Patreon page, patreon.com/metalinjectionlivecast. In addition to video versions of these quarantine casts, you'll get one bonus episode a month. And this month, everyone's been raving about it. So everyone loves it. So many people say many great things. It's the music draft, where we each draft a super group. We each get around. We each pick a guitarist, a vocalist, all the other members of the band. And it came out really funny, and you can listen to that at patreon.com/metalinjectionlivecast for $5 a month. And thank you as always for listening. We have a very special guest, and he's already here, so I don't even know why even hold up the show? Why even make him wait any longer? Maybe let's just bring him on. Hopefully we won't catch him off guard, but that would be pretty funny if we did. Let's bring in Lou Brutus onto the show. Lou, are you there? Oh, he's smart.
Connecting audio.
Hi, Lou.
Let's see if we can get him on.
I see a hat.
And you could be a part of. Well, he might be social mediating for now, but you got to hand it to him. The man knows how to promote. Because Lou is on to talk about his new book. Hello, Lou.
There he is.
The book is Sonic Warrior, My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate, Tales of Sex, Drugs, and Vomiting at Inopportune Moments. Lou, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Under the circumstances, so far, so good.
Same.
Well, Lou, thank you so much for coming on the show. Getting a little echo here. Let me cut that out. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and I love the background. You are a promoter. You have written a book. You've come from the world of rock radio, and I can relate to that. I used to be a DJ on Sirius XM Liquid Metal, and you've seen your fair share of tales, and you've combined these tales into something that people refer to as a memoir. Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. It's a collection of stories. Each chapter is a standalone story, and it comes from different points of my life and career. And I've been doing this shit since I'm a kid. So if you do anything for 40 years or so, chances are you're going to get a lot of fucked up stories all running together. And if you put them together in a book, it looks impressive. But, these are all the aberrations, as all of you know, usually backstage is boring and it's people screaming into their phones trying to get the rock show done. However, now and then crazy out of the ordinary things happen. And that's basically what the book tends to deal with, because it's a lot more interesting than saying, I watched the tour manager scream into his phone in the production office backstage every night on the Slipknot tour for the last week.
Where do you even begin? I mean, you have so many stories. How do you remember everything? Where do you even start when you put this book together?
You know, there's no rhyme or reason to the order of the chapters, except that the first chapter in it is entitled "The Time I Attended My First Concert and Threw Up
Grew
on
up.
Carlos Sanchez."
Yes.
And that one basically gives a little background bio information, and of course talks about the first concert I saw, which was Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent at Madison Square Garden in December of 1976. But other than that, you know, it was a matter of which were the easiest to write, because I'd never written a book before. And a lot of what guided me for which stories to put in was based on input that I got from, you know, other media people that I know, or rock star friends that I have who, you know, were always on me to write a book. And, you know, you've got to put the story about throwing up out of the helicopter at Live Aid, or you've got to tell the story about going up to the Arctic with Metallica, or you've got to tell the story about, you know, being dressed as Hunter Thompson and chasing a buck naked Corey Taylor around the stage in Madison, Wisconsin with a fly swat, you know.
Dressing up like a lobster.
What's that?
Dressing up like a lobster.
Yeah. The Aquabats, and to a metal crowd, they might not know the Aquabats, but I think one of the fun things of the book is it really jumps genres, because, you know, as deeply as I've worked with hard rock and metal and heavy music all these years, there are a ton of other bands that I like and I've been around. So I wanted to tell all of the stories. And the one you're referring to is, they're one of the craziest bands on the planet, the Aquabats. They're like surfing superheroes. And they dressed me up as a lobster once, and they kicked the living shit out of me on stage. I thought I was going to come out of there with no teeth. But yeah, it really, the book in a lot of ways is sort of like I hate to use the term like a love letter to rock and roll, because that sounds kind of lame. But it really does get to the heart of how much I love music, and you know, why I've wanted to be involved in all this stuff my entire life. So, and hopefully it's a good read. You know, all the reviews have been great, and the reaction from everybody has been really fantastic. You know, Corey Taylor, who I referred to just a moment ago, wrote a great foreword for the book, which is really funny. And he was one of the people who stayed on me for several years about getting the book done. You know, he and I have been swapping stories for a long time. And, you know, I've always busted his balls because I'm older than him. So I've seen a lot of bands that he never got a chance to see, but then he turns right around and busts my balls because I'm older than him. But it worked out for the book and getting some good stories into it and stuff. So
now, you said people called you to include stories. Did the opposite happen as well? Like, Lou, that night in Vancouver, you better not put that in your book, because that is something that I run into as well.
Funny that you should mention that. And I want to preface it by saying, when I first sat down to write the book, when I had a couple of false starts, but when I seriously sat down to do the book, I had to figure out what kind of book I wanted to write. And I knew I did not want to write a book that shit all over other people or made them look bad. And that probably would have sold a lot more copies. But I knew I could tell really good and funny and insightful stories without resorting to like breaking up somebody's marriage, or, you know, getting them put back in rehab or whatever the circumstances may or may not have been. I'm not saying anything. But more to your question, yeah, there were a number of people when the word got out, like when we first announced the book officially, the phone lit up for like a week or two after that with, hey, Lou, it's me. Hey, man, what you doing? Hey, I hear you're writing a book. Yeah, I am. So what kind of things are in the book? Would there be stories about blah, 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 blah? And I'd be like, no, that's not in there. And then there are, you know, if you know how to sort of read in between the lines, you can figure out a lot more than I state specifically, but that's part of the fun of the book. And again, really, I think the stories and the chapters all stand on their own, and it would not have been the right tone for me if it had been sort of a breathless tell-all memoir of the things I've seen. Because I'm sure all of us have seen enough horrible shit done by other people, particularly rock stars, that we could write a book about. But, you know, again, I didn't want to be an asshole. So I wrote the kind of book that I wanted to write.
Well,
Right. You weren't ready to burn some bridges.
there's
What was
there's
that?
one story there's one story that I'd love for you to share. And like you don't really share anything like that sordid. You're kind of like the butt of the joke in the chapters, like in a way. But there's one story in particular that I really loved because I really related to it. You talk about like not really drinking on the job or smoking weed, and you had this invitation by Snoop Dogg. You didn't know that he was back on the ganj, and you had these like Cuban cigars. You offered him one, and then he offered you a blunt. And unbeknownst to you, what happened?
Well, this was I want to say it was the year 2000, maybe 2002. It's certainly corrected in the book. It was one of Linkin Park's Project Revolution tours where they used to put together fairly eclectic lineups for like a major rock show. They would put hip hop artists on, they would put punk bands on, they would put ska bands on, and that one year in particular, Snoop was on, and like you referred to, this was right in the middle. I don't know if everyone will recall it, but there was a famous couple of months where Snoop is off the gone. Snoop has renounced weed, and it was like a big deal. And I swear to God, it was right in the middle of all this. I had wrapped up all my interviews that day. It was in Camden, New Jersey. I had done all my interviews by late afternoon, and my producer came to me and said, "Hey, it's not on your schedule, but do you want to talk to Snoop Dogg?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I want to talk to Snoop Dogg. Really interesting guy." And hey, I hear he's not smoking weed. I didn't have anything prepared to speak to him about, but I figured that was an easy enough start. And sure enough, I walk in, and like you said, I just come back from Bermuda, so I had Cuban cigars, and I figured, I saw cigars on the coffee table, so I gave one to Snoop, and he smelled. He said, "Lou Brutus, a true pimp." And he lit the mini Cohiba up, and then I start to roll the tape, and sure enough, he lights his cigar and hands it to me. And this is what a dopey farm boy fuck I am. I'm like thinking to myself, well, gosh, Mr. Dogg, he's a terribly nice gentleman. He's offered me one of his own cigars, and why is there something green stick? Oh my God, it's marijuana! And I took 2 hits off of it, and I only took the first. At that point, I hadn't smoked weed in like 10 years, and I didn't want to hit it just because I knew I'd get really wasted. And then he and his guys are like staring at me, and I'm like, fuck, I got to hit this. So I hit it twice as it went around. The name of the full title of the chapter is "The Time Snoop Dogg Got Me So High I Drooled in My Own Lap." And I literally, I couldn't even make it through the interview. And I end up out at the soundboard to watch Korn's set. And I looked like an extra from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm staring up at the ceiling, looking at like colored lights up in the ceiling that weren't there. That's how high I was. And I feel something itchy on my chin. And I look down, and there is this thick, snotty strand of drool from my mouth to my chin. And I look down, and there is a puddle of drool in my lap. And I looked like I was on fucking Thorazine or something. And then I had to drive home a couple hours to DC. But yeah, true story. I think the last 2 times I smoked weed, there's another chapter that refers to the previous time. And that chapter is entitled "The Time Dr. Hunter S. Thompson Menaced Me with Depraved Violence in a Bottle of Chivas Regal." And same deal, I hadn't smoked weed in years, and Hunter Thompson handed me a joint. And let me tell you something. When Hunter Thompson handed you a joint, I don't care what fucking program you've been in or what you're doing or not doing, you hit it. And he also wrenched my head back. He pulled me by my hair, and I'm like, oh, like this. He almost snapped my neck, and then poured like a good third of a bottle of Chivas Regal in my mouth, down my throat, all over my face. So, and I vomit a lot in the book too. So again, if you're missing live shows,
it's in the title. I would hope so.
Vomiting,
Yeah.
this is the right book. But that's what, and I'm glad you mentioned the entire book title, because not everybody does. I think they're grossed out by it. But I just thought, well, if I was looking through a list of titles of rock books, and I saw one that said "Sonic Warrior, My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate, Tales of Sex, Drugs, and Vomiting at Inopportune Moments," I'd look at that one and go, well, fuck it, I'm buying that. That's the book I'm buying, you know. And it's also why the chapters have very long and involved titles as well, like the time I went to the Arctic with Metallica, or the time I went to the Arctic and got in a mosh pit with a bunch of kids in polar bear fur while Metallica sang about sodomizing a goat, and all of the other ones. The time our tour bus ran over a guy on the New Jersey Turnpike, you know, and I tried to write the chapter titles in a way that seemingly gave away the whole chapter, and yet when you peel it back, there's just lots of other wacky, crazy, horrible, funny shit that goes on. But one thing.
How long is that flight to Antarctica?
Say again, I'm sorry?
How long is that flight to Antarctica to do that?
To the Arctic, we flew, I think it was from Chicago to Yellowknife. And Yellowknife is way up north in the Northwestern Territories. If you look at a map of Canada, Northwestern Territories are in the Northwest. Oh, excuse me, no, we flew to Inuvik. And Inuvik is where the Northwest Territories highway ends. That's basically the end of most civilization. But Tuktoyaktuk, and that took, I'm gonna say 4 hours flying north, I think, on like a, you know, 737-ish kind of plane. And we stayed in Inuvik until it was the day of the show. And just for folks who don't know, Metallica did a private concert at, some people would say Eskimo Village, and I try and correct them. It's Inuit is the correct term for the native people who live in that part of the world. And Tuktoyaktuk, where Metallica played, is this village on the north coast of Canada. It's not only above the Arctic Circle, it's above the tree line, so nothing grows higher than your shin. And it's like fucking tundra. And in the middle of this tundra is this town with a couple of crossroads, but the roads don't go anywhere. The highways don't go there. If you want to drive there, you have to wait for the Mackenzie River to freeze. Then you drive from Inuvik, where we stayed. You drive north on the river for 125 miles. You bang a turn when you hit the Arctic Ocean, and then you're in Tuktoyaktuk. And it was a sponsored thing from Molson Beer. They used to do a Molson ice party every year, and they would pick cool bands to play exotic places in Canada. And the first year they did it in the US, they really wanted it to be something crazy. So they picked literally the remotest spot you could pick on mainland North America, and they brought Metallica. This is 1997, if I remember correctly. So they're just exploding. They're just the hottest band in the world. And you had Metallica, you had Courtney Love and Hole, Veruca Salt, who were friends of mine from Chicago, and a great Canadian band who I haven't seen since then called Moist. And the four bands played in this village in front of, you know, a total of maybe 200 to 300 people, contest winners who were flown in. I was like the lone media representative, and the people who lived there, and a bunch of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police from that area who got to go to the show. And I should add, and I mentioned it in the chapter, some Metallica fans chartered seaplanes. They fucking hired pilots to fly them, not knowing whether they'd get in or not, because technically they weren't going to be allowed in. And I remember I was standing near some of the management people when some of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police walked up and said, "Hey, we got a problem." And the management is like, "Well, what's the matter?" And they said, "Well, some fans just landed in seaplanes out on the river. What should we do?" And everybody was like, "Holy shit, let them in to watch the show." Because there was no tickets, because if you were there, you were allowed to go to the show. There were just so few people in the entire town. And again, like a lot of it I hit on in the book, I've been lucky that I mean, overall, I've been to 3,000, I say music events just because I've been to something so small you wouldn't even consider them a concert. And that goes from seeing a single band at some small bar, right up to mega festivals where I may have seen 40 bands that day, but I only counted as one event. But in all of these things that I've seen, the thousands that I've attended around the world, that Metallica show really was one of the most special. You knew that you were at something that really wasn't going to come again like that. And I've been to a few shows like that. There's the chapter on Live Aid. One chapter that did not make the book that I just didn't get around to writing, that if I do a second book, if I get to, will certainly be in it. will be on the Freddie Mercury tribute show, which was, I want to say, 1992 at the old Wembley Stadium in London, the year after Freddie passed away. And that was an all-star lineup. You had different bands come out and play sets: Def Leppard, Metallica, Extreme. And then for the second half of the show, the surviving members of Queen, they brought out every huge rock star on the planet. And if I had to pick like one show that was the most spectacular, coolest thing I saw, it likely would be the Freddie Mercury tribute show. It was, James from Metallica doing Stone Cold Crazy with Queen, and then David Bowie and Annie Lennox doing Under Pressure. It was just, and it went on and on and on. And even though I
just
was
remember
never a
that
huge
footage
fan
of
it,
like Tony Iommi just worshiping Brian May, and it's just like, wow, for Tony Iommi to be like flipping out over somebody.
absolutely. And what a lot of people don't realize, Tony Iommi and Brian May have been best friends for decades. So it was no surprise. Tony was up there. I can't remember the exact set list and lineup, but I think Tony played on several different songs. He was just up there playing. And, the first band I ever saw in concert, like I mentioned before, was Black Sabbath. So I'm always excited to see Tony, but to see him up there basically as backup in the best of ways. I don't mean that as a dig. I mean, he's up there for the best of reasons to help
Willingly,
out
right? Yeah,
one of his best friends. It was really just one of those things. It just took your breath away. All those cliche things you hear. Oh, it was magic. Oh, it was a spiritual moment. All that shit. In this case, at that show, was all absolutely true.
Well, before we wind down, I did want to talk a little bit about rock radio. Obviously, being someone who has quite a bit of experience with it, it's something we talk about on the show here a lot, and mainly about how active rock, hard rock stations are kind of going away. Like, we're all based in New York, all of us hosts. There's no real hard rock station here. There's a classic rock station, and that's really the only outlet now for rock. And with, not to speak of like the, where radio is in general as a format, in terms of popularity and acceptance, but like, how do you see, like, with rock radio and just rock in general, like how is there a way to get back to the sort of like mainstream situation that we were in maybe like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or is it just a niche thing?
I know it's easy to explain, particularly hard rock, or for people who don't know, like you mentioned, active rock is what like the modern hard rock format would be referred to in the broadcast industry. It's easy to say, yeah, it's only a niche, but who sells all the concert tickets? Like, I refuse to believe that this is a niche. And, virus nonsense aside, most of the concert tickets sold around the country are rock tickets. And that's split up really well between, harder, newer bands. And, there are still big classic rock bands that sell a lot of tickets. And, classic rock should certainly be on the radio as much as it is. But yeah, I scratch my head at how little respect rock is given in general, and specifically hard modern rock. Again, whatever labels people want to, I'm not into labels. I'm just trying to describe it as people would best understand. Part of the reason is, I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies. And one thing that really pisses me off is often you see a band start to succeed in rock, and the minute that they start to sell some albums or sell some tickets, there's a whole lot of people, both fans and music media people, who want to shit all over them. And it's like, fuck, we tear down our own houses. The other thing is, we all have to band together and start to fight for respect from the rest of the industry. The most glaring example of that is the fucking Grammy Awards. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a NARIS member. I'm a Grammy voter, and I've been ready to quit on a couple of occasions, but then I thought, I don't want to give up. Right. When it pisses me off when they leave famous hard rock people like Vinnie Paul out of the memorial segments, or they refuse to put anybody on the telecast. I floated the idea, again, like, I'm no bigwig in this business, so I can't command this kind of movement from people. But maybe rock bands start to sue the Grammy Awards, because the Grammy Awards are supposed to represent all of the membership. And if the only bands getting on there are fucking pop bands, and again, I have nothing against pop music, and there are great pop musicians. It's like any other genre. Some of it's great and some of it sucks. Some of it you think should win some awards and maybe some of it shouldn't. And so I do not have an axe to grind against pop per se, but the fact that they get basically the entire telecast is bullshit. And I know, and I know the initial reaction from a lot of people in rock is to go, oh, fuck it, it's the fucking Grammy Awards. Nobody cares. Fuck them, we don't need them. Well, that's a shitty attitude to have. And if you wonder why we're not covered on as many radio formats, or our bands don't get on TV shows as much, it's because we have ceded this ground to other genres and other formats. And I think the time has come where we have to fight for what we deserve. And part of that is getting our bands, our artists, back on things like the Grammy Awards. The Grammy Awards get seen by zillions of people around the world. Why the fuck shouldn't we have all the rock bands we can on there? And by the way, it is not lost on me that sometimes the only thing that you get for rock on the Grammy Awards is Dave Grohl for 5 seconds applauding somebody, and that's it. It's like, well, there we are. Here's rock and roll for this year.
Yeah.
So again,
but I absolutely agree. It's like representation. It's putting ourselves in front of those eyeballs. Advertisers see it. Advertisers will then it's a whole thing, because it's like with that, it kind of helps educate these brands to feature rock, and then it'll help rock. It'll help all rock bands if a rock band gets pulled up into that mainstream architecture.
And again,
So Lou, thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I just want to remind people, if they want to get my fabulous best-selling book, you can get it through Amazon. You can get the ebook through Kindle or anywhere you get ebooks. And of course, the audiobook, which I narrated myself, is available from Audible and anywhere you get audiobooks. But if you need a break from all these shitty things happening and you miss concerts, this, I hope, will be a really good book for you to check out. And I appreciate the time on here, and you guys do great work, and I'm really honored to be on.
Thanks. And also
Lou,
check out
thank
your
you so much for taking the time to hang out with us.
And have a chance to talk about that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We're all good?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all set. But do you want to plug your photography, by the way? Noah just mentioned it.
Oh yeah, no. Just to follow Lou Brutus on Instagram for all those neat photos you've been taking of bands over the years.
Oh yeah, and lately I've been trying to put more of the concert photography up on Instagram, just because we can't go to live shows. So at Lou Brutus on Instagram, at Lou Brutus on Twitter, Lou Brutus Rocks on Facebook. And again, if you forget any of that or you need info on the book, the website is chock full of info. And actually there's galleries of tons of photos too. So loubrutus.com. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Lou. Have a great night. All right. That was Lou. Thank you. And we are back, the four of us, Darren and Sid. How are you guys doing?
Darren and Sid were frozen the whole
there?
time.
Darren
The
and
internet
Sid?
connection just sucked.
I had a question, but like we blew past it before I had a chance to get it in.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe next time we'll have Lou
It's
back.
okay, Sid.
Yeah,
I was gonna.
I
Well,
feel
he
like I
said
need to,
that
like,
when he
log
went
off
to
and log
the
back in.
Arctic with Metallica.
Oh, it's
But,
7
he
o'clock.
said
Good
he-
thing we
the
got Lou
whole
off
was-
for the
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the 7 o'clock thing. Well, I was gonna say something about the fact that
Yeah.
I never knew that they played the Arctic. I knew that they played Antarctica.
I somehow in my mind,
Sorry,
I guess
guys,
I
I'm having some
conflated
issue
the
with
We can
two.
my,
talk. over this.
Video, apparently.
Yeah, because you had a joke about us being frozen.
Someone is blowing a
Yeah, you got
shofar.
frozen, motherfucker. Really?
Yeah.
Lucky guy.
Yeah,
Is
I feel like Rob is frozen. I don't know.
I'm not frozen. I'm
I
here.
can't tell.
I think it's that
You
guy
ever hear
behind
that
him,
joke?
You can hear
like
me?
fell on his Ethernet
You're
cable.
frozen.
I can hear you.
You're frozen to us. I see you as a still image, but I hear your voice. I hear your voice.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Noah too.
All right.
Oh, now Rob's gone altogether.
No.
Oh,
no, Rob,
are you
All right, let's
back?
try that
completely
again.
What's
gone.
happening?
I hear
No,
his
I
voice.
rebooted my video. Yes.
This
Welcome
must be-
to Livecast.
This is absolutely.
Zoom tech support.
This is riveting for the audio.
Everybody's
audience,
going
by the
through
way.
it.
I
It's
just wanna
Zoom
fine.
is
say.
so good for 1 week. Yeah. Hey, Rob.
It did work pretty well last week.
All right.
Rob.
Hey.
Hi.
Rob, let's see. I see you as a still image, but I hear you. I hear you perfectly. Do you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, let's just, I mean, this is an
All
audio
I hear are pots
He's
and
not
show.
responding
pans.
to what
So
I'm
let's-
saying.
continue providing audio.
Let's do this as
Oh, boy.
right. Exactly. Now I don't
There
hear
does
Rob at
seem
all.
to be a delay with everyone's audio, though.
Ah,
Oh, I hear.
Cool.
But I hear Sid and you. Really?
All right. I think we should edit
Let's
this
just
off.
You
be
wanna
silent
restart
for
the
the rest
call?
of the show.
The archive. I'm not sure that would do anything.
Do you want to restart the call?
It seems to. I don't think that would do anything. Or I'm not. I think that would break the stream, the embed, like the live stream. Like I'd have to update it. It says does anyone getting this? Your internet
I see.
connection is
don't you-
unstable. Is that just me getting that? Is it? Might be something
that's
with
That's
like
my
just
a
you.
couple of minutes ago.
for all of us.
I didn't see it.
Or
I
maybe
missed
it's just Zoom. Maybe like there's so many people on Zoom. How about
If you work
how
for
are things
Zoom,
now?
listen
Better
to
or
this
worse?
show. Oh, now I'm getting that message.
There is so much.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot, Noah.
Yeah, now I don't see Noah.
Now I'm getting that message as well.
I think that's why the end of that Lou Brutus interview was a little awkward because I think that's when we started our internet
Oh, okay.
start responding and then like stop and they were like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's weird.
I was
think
going
it
to
is a
ask
Zoom
him if
issue
we
'cause
should
my
petition.
It's
internet-
gonna be our
Volpe to
life from
play
now
the
on.
Grammys next year. Yes,
petition. What's it?
I was going to ask if we
What was
should
your joke?
petition
You
the
got cut off.
Grammys to have Volbeat perform next year. He probably would have been into that.
Oh, he's a big Volbeat fan.
Probably.
All right, we're gonna have to restart this. This is just not working. Let's
Let's just do it.
I'll
Yes, let's
exit
restart
and then re-enter the room. Thank you, everyone. Be
Okay.
patient.
Be right
Thank you.
back,
We're-
friends.
Where? So am I hanging up on this thing?